such methods rather than to make it challenging for them by having them to negotiate roundabouts.
Agreed, yeah. And the fact that we're providing 3,500 houses around a new school that the council hasn't delivered a secondary school in this nature before with its housing around it, that it's intended to obviously catch as many users walking locally. And as mentioned, we're looking at small parts of the wider network, but there is a whole range that was in the outline application which shows all the wider walking and cycling networks for the development site.
Right. Okay, now come on to other members. Bob, you first.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Page 96, paragraph 24, the applicant has indicated that they will endeavour to provide access to temporary and permanent secondary schools in the early phases. Will they or won't they? And just a point of clarification on the cycle route, this is not a pavement that people can ride cycles on, it's a separate route, is it? Just from my understanding, because you know my feelings of people riding on pavements. And also on page 101, para 55, I was very interested in the written scheme of investigation that has established a strip, map and record process, which is something I've never heard of. Excavate, map and record I would do, but strip sounds like you're going to use a JCB, which is a no-no. Thank you.
The last archaeology one is quite technical. Does anyone feel able to comment on that? Very brave of you, Nick.
No, I myself am not qualified to comment on it, but I know people that are.
Yeah, who does?
So Berkshire Archaeology have approved this written scheme of investigation. Essentially, they're happy with it. As I understand it, the works will be concurrent with the beginning of the road being constructed, and it will be monitored real time by a senior archaeologist. So Berkshire Archaeology are fully aware of the methodology that's being used here.
Okay, so
Thank you. I'll have words with their chairman who I know quite well about the use of the strip.
okay, all right. Could we see if we get comments on Bob's views on shared services, which I think he's alluding to?
Yeah, this is a shared footpath cycleway. And generally for the reason that in an area like this, yes, it's intended to obviously have the use of cycles. However, it's usually that you would put a segregated footpath cycleway in the vicinity of somewhere close to a train station or approach to a town where obviously you've got a more higher frequency. But in this area, if you end up having, we intend through the travel planning to have a lot of people walking and cycling, but obviously if you have one lower number or the other, then you have half a footpath that isn't really being utilised by many people. So in areas like this, we go for shared. In areas closer to stations, etc., we'll go for segregated to try and help guide people to the route.
At the risk of incurring Simon's wrath, the problem with using a shared cycleway is the fact that cyclists then believe they can ride on every pavement in the borough, and they don't care who's on there, they just pelt down at high speed. And I was told at one meeting, the Community Safety Partnership meeting, that it's better that cyclists interacted with pedestrians than it was a car. I would beg to differ.
Right. Well, we note your variation from the council's current policy on these matters.
On the issue of the access to the school, it is provided, so the developers are providing a temporary access to the school, and then the permanent access is on the plan as shown. So that's
it's not in Denver they're going to do it.
It's not they're doing it.
Thank you.
Okay. Michelle?
Having the joy of having two schools located very close to me, I will say that cycle paths are a very great idea, but have you ever seen the Forest Boys come flying out of forest and as a swarm through the middle of your development? You have an interesting experience. That's why I'm wondering about the crossing the road there. I don't think that's the world's best idea. Having a cycle path on both sides would be a better idea. And I actually was in New York over the weekend, and they have a split path between footway and cycleway, and it's actually designated that way. And for the most part, cyclists actually stay on the cycle part. And that means pedestrians don't have to dodge or jump into the bushes as a few older people have told me they've had to do in the past. And traffic modeling. Anybody who thinks they can traffic model around a school, I would like to suggest they come either to Winnish or to any school in the borough for that matter, and seeing how many parents decide to actually go into the school and drop their little children off because they can't walk 2 feet or 3 feet. And it would be a good idea to have a traffic signal for turning right, because there's no way you're going to have just one person queuing at the junction. I can't believe 50 or 60, most likely. And in a school with 1,200 students, you're going to have several hundreds, maybe 1,000 cars coming down that road.
Well, I know you often express a somewhat sceptical view, Rochelle, on some of these matters, but as you know, this is determined by the Department of Transport, it's determined by council policies, and as usual, if we believe that those are wrong, we need to lobby to change those rather than to try and change policy on the fly, which we're not going to do tonight.
But reality versus modeling are a
Yeah,
little bit, have something to do with each
I
other.
fully accept your point, but we have heard, as I said at the very start of the committee tonight, my normal introduction, we are here advised by professional planning officers. To the best of my knowledge, no one sitting around the committee is a qualified highways engineer, transport specialist, or anything else. So we have to take our advice from specialists. And if we are to reject that advice, which we're free to do, if you wish to, you have to be able to robustly defend why you believe that as lay people, you'd have to justify this to the inspector that we know better than the professionals. We can certainly question it as we have done tonight.
I'm not saying don't have the road, I'm just saying look at this and make sure that you actually have a better idea, because experience, and this is experience living on a road, living with a secondary school, living with a primary school, and seeing how many cars come down that road. And reality has a large part to do with modeling, but unreality seems to have a lot to do with the present modeling.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you. Sorry to go back to the right junction to the school again. What you need to know, surely, if it's called the traffic turning right, there will be parents going to pick up their children. So have you assessed what the capacity of the school is and what the likelihood is that parents will be doing that? What proportion of them are likely picked up? Because it's really nothing to do with the A327, is it? It's just specifically the school.
Yeah. Yeah, the part of the outline application obviously included the assessment, which included the land use for the school as an associated trip rate with it. And we need to bear in mind that obviously the predominant peak here is the AM peak, because the PM peak is offset from the school peak. So in terms of the AM peak, obviously, which is generally the worst peak, that's the one that's been assessed. So in terms of its placement with the school, we need to bear in mind as well that this is a secondary school, not a primary school, whereas in general the primary schools tend to have a lot higher car movements associated with them. Granted, this obviously is a bigger school, so obviously you've got proportionality there you need to consider. But I think the measures the council's applying for the travel plan, the My Journey, the traffic assessments that have been quite robustly done, and the facilities on the footpath cycleways and the new housing right on its doorstep, I think the assessments we're quite comfortable and confident.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, and Chris Singleton?
Thanks, Simon. Yes, I'm concerned about this question of footpaths and safety at that junction, and maybe I've not actually understood. If you can just look at the junction of the main road with Shillers Road, how do people cross in that area? Have you got a larger scale? I'm thinking not only of the traffic, not only of the pedestrians that are going north-south across that road, across the Relief Road, but also if it ties in with the Green Route to the north of that road, how do they cross Shearlands Road north? What provision is there? Is it safe? Because there's more than one road to be crossed in that area. Thank you.
The Greenway element to the north actually is not part of this application. It's part of obviously the reserve matters and the wider section. So that crossing for that Greenway route will be further up here. So, essence, at the moment we're only looking at the pedestrian cycle crossing, which obviously is to the south of this, and also crossing this facility and back down. As I mentioned, you have got this facility as well, which is identified to be pedestrian cycles, which will allow us to provide a connection through the reserved access parcels later down towards the school, which could overcome the issue of users wanting to use that northern one.
Thank you. And can you just clarify that the crossing which is shown there? How is that controlled, or is that just a question of people grabbing a gap between the cars?
It's uncontrolled.
Sorry?
Just uncontrolled, yeah. It's an uncontrolled crossing.
And are you happy with that in terms of the volume of cars that are going to be using that road?
Yes, and that's why we got it audited, just to be on the safe side that we had an independent assessment undertaken.
Thank you.
Okay.
Another one for you, Chris. So you mentioned the discussions that you've been having with the developers about the possibility of a roundabout. Heard the concerns from Finchampstead and Barker. Have you got the comfort you need that if this does create a problem, because I think everybody's in agreement that we're very sceptical of the survey work that's been done, and it could be a problem down the track, that you've got the comfort you need if there, I know it's not ideal, but if we did need to introduce a roundabout, that we could do that at some later date?
Not at the school junction itself, but obviously to the north of the district centre element, and there is the facility to provide one. Well, not to provide one, but there is the scope. We asked them to obviously demonstrate, would there be the facility, would it obviously have any implications on any drainage or utilities, etc. And they've obviously shown an area that we could consider at a bit later reserved access space for the district centre once we fully are aware of what's going to be in that district centre. But yeah, in terms of the school junction, I think that will retain as it currently is.
Any other members wishing to speak? Malcolm?
A couple of fairly simple questions, really. It's to do with cyclist sharing with veterans. We're not talking here about kiddies bikes, so we're talking about full-size bikes at all times. There are no rules, I imagine, on speed or anything else involving, so there could be drop handlebars, hurtling along. There are no regulations you can apply just a full-size bike. If they're on the road and they're riding in dust, they have to have lights on. Do those same rules apply when people are on a cycle pathway? Because if they don't have lights or they don't have any of those sorts of things, it increases the risk. Are there no regulations that require that?
That's a
I think there's. I'm not sure there is.
No one's ever asked that before, have they?
No, I think on the road, obviously, I think you need to be obviously driving. It's the same thing as being due care and attention kind of thing.
Okay, Bob's the expert.
So I'm just concerned about when people are sharing it, if it's dusty, how dangerous it might be, though.
What's that if they want on
There are no rules.
Well, the thing is, all the footpath cycleways are lit anyway, so obviously there shouldn't be an issue with them also providing lights. I think it's more an issue of a cyclist on a road not being seen by a driver potentially. It's the bigger issue. But yeah, in terms of speeds, I think when you look at the overall route, there are obviously some crossing points. Obviously, at places so I couldn't imagine, and the footpath does obviously lean in and out where you've got right turn lanes and potential crossings. So I can't imagine someone getting up to some significant speeds down the footpath on this location.
You haven't seen the happens on weekends.
Okay.
Middle-aged men wearing light
Okay. I think just the other things worth just pointing out to members is that whilst this new secondary school will be opening in September, or rather in legacy buildings, and the main new school will open the following year, you are aware that the school is starting with just one complete year of entry. So the school will take a number of years to get up to full capacity, and if some of the rather jaundiced views that have been expressed tonight prove to have any substance, we should get advance notice of it before the school is fully occupied by seeing levels of congestion increasing to unsustainable levels, in which case we will be asking all sorts of detailed questions, Chris. But we have, we've heard, just reiterate, we cannot be selective about the information that we're provided with, and we have to take it for face value. The people who provided this advice in terms of the traffic surveys and the assessments are professionals in that work, and they're advising us that this will work, and we're not in a position really to any level of confidence to say we know better, unless of course any of you wish to propose an alternative proposal, which is of course always open to you.
Just one comment, Simon, on that. With a new development, isn't it better to be proactive rather than reactive?
I couldn't agree more, but we have heard tonight very clearly that the proposals here meet the requirements of our own transport team. So, do any other members wish to speak? Do any members wish to propose an alternative proposal to that is here tonight? In that case, I shall put application 15336 for the first phase of the Narmore Road extension to the committee for decision, as detailed in the report. Could you please indicate whether you're willing to support the application? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, members. That concludes that item. Thank you. Yep, we'll have a 5-minute break for members. Thank you very much, everybody. I'd now like to reconvene the meeting, please. Thank you for your attention. We now come on to the planning application for Bovis and Gleeson, which is at Matthews Green Park. Again, as with previous ones, this is a reserved matters item, the outline planning approval having been granted already. And this relates to 760 dwellings, but this relates, of course, in detail to the Northern Distributor Road. So we'll go straight across to the planning offices and present this to David Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, like the last application, this is a reserved matters application for a road through development site that was previously secured. Outline Planning Commission. This time the application site is in Matthews Green Farm in the North Woking strategic development location. The original outline application was approved consent back in April 2015. It's for a residential-led development of approximately 760 dwellings, with the Northern Distributor Road shown running through the centre of the application site. At the time of the determination of the outline application, detailed matters of access were considered, and detailed matters of layout, landscaping, scale and appearance were reserved. Now, in terms of the approved drawings, the scheme did show the primary route for Northern Distributor Road running east-west across the site, linking Twyford Road to Townley Road, and at the time it did show alternative routes for Northern Distributor Road running northwards should the Council's Executive Committee have chosen a different deliverable route for that road. In the event, the Executive Committee of 24th of September 2015, the Council's Executive Committee did decide on the deliverable route for the NDR. In terms of this application site, that route does follow the connection that was shown within the outline scheme, so linking around Bolt Junction at Twyford Road, linking into Townley Road. What the Executive Committee also provided was an indication of the cross-section of the Northern Distributor Road as it is expected that will come forward, and that forms a central carriageway with planted verges either side and segregated cycle/pedestrian routes either side of them. So moving on to the detailed matters of the reserved matters application. This plan on the board shows the tie-in with Twyford Road. At the outline application, the roundabout junction was agreed. Now we're starting to look at the details of how those junctions, of the cross-section that will be provided in accordance with the Executive Committee. So you've got the central carriageway, planted verges either side, and then pedestrians going cycleways either side of that. We've also got details here of the access junctions to the development parcels as they will be coming forward, and they'll be given cycle and pedestrian priority. Moving on to the central section of the site, we have in the bottom right-hand corner the access to the new district centre that will be coming forward in the school in that location. They're showing a right-hand turn within the lane going from east to west. And you also see the access junction in this location down here, which will serve phase 1 of the development, which was previously approved at this planning committee. Moving on to the Townley Road tie-in. The tie-in shows the alignment of the carriageway being shifted approximately 3 metres away from the existing back edge of the footway to achieve the 3.5 metre wide pedestrian stroke cycleway, and also provide some planting in that location to provide environmental buffer for the residents along the western edge of Talby Road. Just back on this, the scheme as is shown does show the removal of hedgerow and trees in this location, and I'll come on to those in a bit more detail in a minute. So in terms of the Talby Road tie-in, the original application was received, or the original reserve matters application was received back in October 2015. And this is shown on the left-hand side image. That showed the road tying into Talby Road at the earliest possible stage. But you'll note there that it also shows the loss of the tree and the hedgerow in that location. So even tying in at Talby Road in that early location, it was proposed at that time to lose that vegetation. The scheme now in front of committee that you have to consider tonight is the one on the right hand side. So it shows, as I said earlier, the carriageway of the road being pulled 3 metres across from the back edge of the footway, and the provision of landscaped and these pedestrian cycleways. In terms of the trees that, and the hedgerow that will be lost along the Talby Road tie-in, this image shows those trees in detail, and concerns about these trees have been raised by the Wokingham District Veteran Tree Association along with the Wokingham Town Council and local residents. This tree at the bottom is a veteran tree, category A, located adjacent to Talby Road, and that will be lost as part of the scheme in front of you tonight. This tree above, the image above, shows a tree to the north of the application site, and that won't be lost as a part of this application, but will potentially be lost if the alignment of the road, as is shown here, is continued on north of the site as anticipated. Touching on those trees, the council has, these trees weren't shown for removal as part of the outline application, so in terms of considering the application for you tonight, the recommendation for approval is being made on the basis of the need for and benefits of the development as a whole that's coming forward, but also having in mind the mitigation and compensation that's coming forward. Not only from the development parcels themselves, which will be delivering landscape schemes, from the SANG itself, which will be a large landscape area, but also from the landscape planting along the Northern Distributor Road itself. And the submitted landscape and ecological management plan indicates the planting of 188 new trees. Apologies, not the 830 that's referenced to in the report, sorry, that was a typing error. So, officers are recommending the application for approval. Just before your consideration, I'd like to just bring your attention to the member update, which was circulated earlier. There's 2 points of that in terms of this application. The first one just updates the drawing references to make sure that the revisions are the most up-to-date drawings that we're considering here this evening. And the second point relates to representations received from the Ember Residents Association, which are requesting that council seek to shift the road even further away from the Talby Road residents than the 3 metres achieved on the drawings, to allow this matter to be reserved, to allow further conversations to be had in that regard. Now, in response, officers have made comments that we have plans showing a specific alignment of the road, which we're here to consider tonight. This, for the reasons set out in the report, is acceptable in planning and highways terms, and from the perspective of determining this planning application, there's no justifiable reason to refuse or delay the decision pending further amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We have 2 people registered to speak on this. Firstly, could I call from Woking Town Council, Kevin Morgan? Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, members, good evening. Just a couple of observations before I come on to the main points. This application is to seek detailed permission for the construction of the NDR through the Matthews Green development, considering alignment and design detail. The road's already being built. So I don't know what influence this is going to have on it, but that's sad to note. Now, the main comments that we have put together is, we've already been touched on by the officer. The landscape and ecological management plan requires the removal of 3 magnificent mature trees. 1 at Twyford Road on the roundabout and 2 on Townley Road. Sadly, the tree at Twyford Road has already met its doom and appears to have vanished, which is a very sad note. But the 2 trees on Townley Road could be saved by a slight realignment of the Tye Road by no more than 100 yards. Those trees don't need to be taken out by a very, very simple alignment of that Tye-in road. There are a couple of other observations on this application that have been made. I noticed that the officers commented that notifications have been sent to the residents about this application and notices have been attached to lamp posts and all that sort of stuff. I went around there today. I can find outline permission from last year notices. I can find the outline permission notices stuck to one board. I can find reserve matters tied to a lamp post, but I cannot find any notices regarding this application. I've also spoken to several residents on Townley Road and they deny having ever received a letter, so I think we need to bear that in mind in this application. Finally, the landscape and ecological management plan, which forms quite a significant part of this, I would challenge any member to fully review that document in view of the fact that the plans and a lot of the detail contained in that document are invisible. Can't even read them with a magnifying glass in the copy that was forwarded to the Town Council, and I would challenge any member to fully review the diagrams of that document. So what I would ask members to consider is my proposal that we look at some sort of slight realignment to save those beautiful mature trees, and that we bear in mind that residents really don't seem to have been properly notified about this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And could I ask AG for the applicant, Charles Collins?
Thank you, Mr Chairman, members of the committee, good evening. Charles Collins from Savills. I'm representing Bovis Homes and Gleeson Developments this evening. On behalf of my clients, we fully endorse the officer's recommendation before you this evening. As has been outlined, this is a reserved matters application, so matters of detail to be decided. As you know, the site benefits for outline approval for 760 units as granted April of last year. A first phase has been granted permission for 100 units as well back in October. This is obviously a key and pivotal aspect of the proposal, the key link road through the site and a key section of the wider Northern Distributor Road. We have worked very closely with officers on the design of the road. I think you can see that from the revision numbers on the drawing, in some cases revisions 6 or 7. We've been working on these in pre-application and also since submission of the proposal in October. The alignment fully reflects the September executive decision as outlined by our officers. That was a decision for the alignment of the NDR. As you know, there's various bits being delivered by developers, Bovis, Crest, Nicholson, Gleeson, and other bits being delivered by the Borough Council themselves. And it's worth noting that the developments themselves will be providing significant financial contributions towards those elements being delivered by the Borough. The alignment has moved throughout the design process, so that we've made changes, for example, on Townley Road to move the alignment further away from existing properties. In terms of the decision before you this evening, the decision to approve would enable the delivery of the NDR by Bovis this year on the site. That includes an additional 120 metres of carriageway and cycleway, which will of course reduce the Borough Council's contribution and costs and disruption. In terms of technical matters, you have those details before you from the officers. In essence, the road is 7.3 metres wide, with wide verges, cycleways, to accord with your various design requirements, various pedestrian refuges included too, as well as bus stops and a two-pin crossing to enable safe access to the future primary school. In addition, whilst we have tried our best to avoid any loss of trees, we are unfortunately going to have to lose the trees identified by the officer in his presentation, we are, as he's outlined, planting significant additional trees, including some additional oak trees as part of our wider landscape strategy to mitigate the impact of that. Just to conclude, in response to a couple of the points made by the Town Council, it's worth noting that Bovis has not started construction on this road. I appreciate there's a lot of construction activity on the site at the moment. That's because it benefits from outline consent and detailed consent for various accesses, as well as detailed consent for 100 dwellings on the site. Hall Road is in construction at the moment, which has of course been approved by Condition 9 of the Construction Management Plan. In addition, some utilities had to be installed as well, which follows a similar route. I've run out of time, so I'll have to stop. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay. So that concludes those who are registered to speak on this. So we now come on to Chris, you're the board member on the panel from Pembroke, who invited you to speak first.
Yes, who's about again on this one, Simon? Yes. First of all, I've raised a number of things with officers prior to the meeting with queries on this, and I'm grateful for the responses I've had. I will just touch on them again, I think for the benefit of the people that are here, so that they can hear the responses there. I think first of all, there's the question of phasing. Residents have expressed concern about the use of the Townley Road access point, and to keep that to the shortest period possible. I wonder if you can update us in terms of how soon we can be relying, not totally, but more greatly on the Twyford Road access. Shall I carry on with the other things, Simon, as well at the same time? Right. On the question of the design of the road, this ties in partly with the question of capacity, of course, and I'm just wondering that in the report in places it does refer to a width of 6.1 metres. Now also we've just heard that in terms of 7.3 metres. I'd like clarification on that. Do we have 7.3 metres for the entire length of the road, particularly with the fact that part of the road is going to be 40 miles an hour and not 30? I think that the last point, which actually is obviously a very sensitive one in terms of these trees, I'd like to. I have asked the question actually as to whether this veteran oak tree, which seems to be, yeah, we don't want to lose any, but the veteran oak tree was the one I think which caused the greatest concern. What would be the impact if we were to request a moving of the road to avoid this tree having to come down? I'm concerned on the one hand, it's a question of balance here, because we're trying to move the road as far as possible away from the houses. If it's a question that the road has to move back in the direction of the houses for this tree, then clearly we'd have to look at that. As I say, it would be a question of balancing, which is the greatest evil. So perhaps you can comment on that. Thank you.
Chris, do you want to go to the road element and comment perhaps?
Yeah, no, I can't pick up on most. In terms of the phasing, Charlie's mentioned as well, obviously, that the intention is to construct as soon as possible. The roundabout's currently being constructed on Twyford Road. The Townley Road access and the Hall Route have been agreed as part of the construction management phasing plan, and the intention is, following agreement tonight, subject to obviously permission being granted, the intention is to have that road in and constructed within a year. So that's what we're being currently advised, and the contractors are on site to obviously progress with that. Therefore, in terms of the route being used as a Hall Route, coming in from Old Forest Road or coming from Twyford Road, the route is open obviously to allow greater flexibility for it to come from either direction to get through the sites, and obviously the parcels that are being progressed out through the reserve access spaces. In terms of the width, I hadn't spotted that in the report. It is 7.3 metres wide. I confirm it is 7.3 metres wide, as Charlie's obviously also advised in his presentation. And I think just picking up on the point you mentioned about capacity, now the council obviously back last year, the council's executive made the decision obviously for the route to run through Townley Road and obviously down to the west, all the way down to Reading Road. And as part of that assessment work that was undertaken, the council identified through the traffic modelling that Old Forest Road versus further western leg had an element of drawing slightly more traffic through to it, and therefore there was the benefit and the requirement for increasing the road width from 6.1 to 7.3 from Reading Road right the way through. So currently the plan and design is for this to also be a little bit 7.3 to enable the capacity. The Townley Road section, which the council is delivering through to Old West Road and further on, that's also going to be 7.3. And then there's a section that's been designed to go through Bell Farm Land or Belfandry Lane, and then down to Belfandry Lane, Wiltshire Road area, Hornhouse Road. That's also 7.3 linking through to the Kentwood Farm Phase 1, Phase 2 applications, and then further on down to London Road.
Fine, thank you.
Tree, pick up your line, but I think in terms of, I think it's worth pointing out, going backwards slightly to the outline plan application. In terms of the two alignments, which Dave showed in his presentation, there was two alignments initially shown, one tying back into Tatley Road and one going north. Obviously through the extra work that the council had done following the outline application, the executive decided and agreed to progress forward with the western route tying into Tatley Road. At that point, the road initially tied straight into Tatley Road at the outline application. So following the election to obviously go with that route, we've obviously had work with the local parish, the residents and the developers themselves to see what benefits we could make to try and improve that area slightly for existing residents, and also to deliver the council's requirement for the specification for the Narwhal Ride. So as you probably know, if you go down Tatley Road now, it's probably between 5.5 to 6.1 metres wide. And it's just a footpath and obviously a small element of verge, which I think a few properties have encroached into public highway already, which we think is obviously addressed. But the facility of taking down a tree and moving the carriageway over, whilst the tree gets lost, it does allow for the ability to have the verge, tree planting, footpath cycleway adjacent to the properties, and then obviously the 7.3 metre carriageway, and again the footpath cycleway and the verge on the northern side as well. So we get the full specification along its length.
Can I maybe just for clarification to say which is the tree that unfortunately we lose? The 7 point, the veteran one.
This large one is more so.
Is that that?
Yeah.
This tree inside, one side is this tree here, and this will be the one that's lost as part of the proposal. This one just the northern side. The alignment is shown here. Continues as it is envisaged it will do at this moment in time. That will need to be moved as well to accommodate that revised alignment. But the tie-in that's shown at this moment in time onto Talbot Road doesn't necessitate the loss of that tree.
Can I just come back? It's clear then that if we were to try to save that tree, this would mean moving the road back where residents in Talbot Road didn't want it. So, I mean, obviously, members have to take that into account, but it's definitely there's a balance between the two. Thank you.
Well, you answered one question about where the cyclists are going to go, because Tatley Road is quite narrow through there, and it's very difficult to actually walk down that road, mainly cycle down that road as well. I'm quite mystified about how you're going to get that width without taking out some houses or something like this along the way, or else taking out at least the cottage on the side and through the Tatley Depot as well. It's rather narrow through a couple of those locations, and it'll be very difficult. But also, it's nice to see you're adding bus stops on this road. Shame you couldn't keep the bus on Matthews Green Road that a lot of the residents use there. And the residents of Brimley come close, are quite happy that you're not coming out right next to them.
Don't think there's any actual question there, was
Oh
there?
yes, the question is, what are you going to do about the cycle path across there when it's very narrow across from the cottage almost at the end of Tatley, and also through Tatley Depot area, where the road is kind of narrow there. There's not really any place to do this unless you go into the hole there that floods on a regular basis on one side.
I think just firstly, that's outside the red line application that we're looking at now, but the council has the PM on board, and the alignment we see here tying in has been worked up between our project manager and the developers consultants to ensure that the tie-in is the most appropriate, with us progressing the rest of that scheme to the west, which will allow for the full specification for the cycleway to be provided.
But in view of Rochelle's comment, can we just categorically confirm that the benefit of everybody present, that the alignment of the road does not need houses to be demolished, as Michelle to apply.
What's shown here, it
On
doesn't,
this,
but obviously outside of the
Yeah,
red
that's-
line
that's a-
application, it's the council's obviously progressing negotiations with some landowners coming.
Okay, all right. Any other members? Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I will refer my fellow members to the comments I made earlier on shared cycle routes. I'm unhappy about these trees being removed. Para 118 of the NPPF should be referred. Planning permission should be referred. Development resulting in the loss, etc., including the loss of aged or veteran trees found outside ancient woodland, unless the need for and benefits of the development in the location clearly outweigh the loss. I'm not sure it does. I can't see the difficulty in just moving the road a little bit to miss the tree, or even make it a roundabout, but that's beside the point.
I think the point we've heard there, though, is that to move the road would move the road nearer to the houses, which is what specifically the residents didn't want, because it brings the traffic closer to their homes. So you could argue it's the lesser of two
Ways
evils.
of mitigating that. I noticed that they're going to replace planting that, but it'll take a damn good few years to get a tree that size,
Yep.
even if it is an oak tree, because they usually tend to have it. So I'm not happy with it.
Okay, all right. I mean, I think I'm happy to echo the view that I think members know from previous performances on the committee that I'm a great one for trying to ensure that some of the things that make Woking very attractive, which is its comparatively green nature, is quite important to maintain. However, I think that has to be balanced, and clearly Woking is embarking at the moment on building 5 new roads, having not built any roads for how many years, John? 40 years. 40 years. And sadly, building new roads sometimes requires that we need to make some compromise. And in this case, it's the trees. There is a substantial amount of planting being alternatively proposed. I fully accept that none of the people sitting around the panel are going to see those trees as veteran trees, and there's some remarkable medical improvements in the years. But I think it's one of these things where it has to be measured against the overall community benefit of the improvements on the road, which is clearly an absolute need in view of the significant amount of new development that's taking place around the borough. Any other members wishing to speak on this? Okay, so do we need to make any amendment to the proposal in view of this comment about the road width being incorrectly detailed in one place? Can you just check on that, please?
I think the comment related to what was set out in the executive report rather than I think the comment relates to the width of the road as it was set out in the executive report, as opposed to
So it doesn't form part of what
the drawings are secured under the...
So it's nothing, doesn't affect what we may improve tonight. Okay, all right. The other thing I'd just like to cover off before we go to the vote were comments made about public notification, about the lack of signage. But I do notice in the report that there were over 400 letters went out to neighbours, and 12 of those have responded. Can you just confirm that this has been appropriately promoted and advertised? Thank you.
Yes, Chair.
Michelle, please.
Yes, Chair. We checked and the notifications went out. Cyclones went up, and we also advertised in the local paper. Unfortunately, with cyclones, they tend to come down very quick as well in some cases, so we've no control of that.
But that's presumably why we also ensure that individual notifications are posted to over 400 affected residents. Right. So, members, we have a clear recommendation in front of you with no further modifications other than those detailed in the members' updates. Could you please indicate whether you're willing to support this application? Were you supporting or not, Michelle? Just your hands are varied a bit, so you're not supporting, right? Okay. So that is supported by 7 members. Are you wishing to abstain or vote against? Against? Abstain. So 1 abstention, 1 against, and so that is carried by 7 votes of support. So we thank you for that. We now move on to the Spencer's Wood application of Marlborough House. We'll just wait for members of the audience to leave. We can go to that one. now get on to the Marlborough House application. Before we hear the presentation on this, from Andrew Child, just remind those present that 7 of the committee visited this site last week. We looked at the site itself. We looked at the surrounding buildings from the upstairs of the existing building that's proposed to be modified, and we also looked at the site from the adjoining property, which is the sunny side. Okay, so John, could I just ask you to encourage Chris to start encourage people to leave away from the corridor so they're not disturbed. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so we crack up.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal seeks full planning permission for conversion and extension of the existing office building to provide 15 flats, 12 one-beds and 3 two-beds, a new vehicle access and 18 parking spaces, soft landscaping and amenity space. The site is located within settlement and within the Ashes area of special character. Architecturally, the current office building is somewhat of an anomaly within the street, located within a group of early 20th century brick or rendered buildings that front onto Basingstoke Road. The surrounding area predominantly comprises 2-storey detached and semi-detached dwellings. The site is relatively flat, although it gently slopes down towards the rear of the site towards the east. The site currently benefits from a fallback position of having an extant prior approval consent in place for the conversion of the office into 11 flats. Therefore, the principle of the conversion to flats is already established. The previous planning application, F 2015-0346, for a more intensive scheme of 21 units with a large additional block to the rear, was refused in October 2015. This was due to concerns over the impact on the character of the Ashes special character area, insufficient space for landscaping, overlooking, insufficient amenity space, inadequate surface water drainage, and failure to provide Section 106 contributions. The main change between the current application and the previous scheme is that the accommodation block to the rear is no longer proposed, and a communal garden is now proposed as part of this latest proposal. In terms of impact on the character of the area, the proposal provides an extension to the existing office building to the north in a subservient manner and a double gabled frontage which would better reflect the residential nature of this part of Basingstoke Road. Adequate space for landscaping is proposed along the frontage of the site. In terms of neighbours and impact on neighbours, the proposal will result in overlooking from 2 side windows at first floor on the southern elevation of the proposed flats to Sunnyside. And this is not an arrangement the council would normally consider acceptable. However, the fallback position means that the office could be converted with up to 8 windows overlooking Sunnyside. The applicant has amended the latest scheme as far as practically possible to limit the potential overlooking by removing some of the secondary windows in the southern elevation. Environmental health have raised no concerns in respect to this proposal in terms of potential noise impacts, but the applicant is willing to provide an acoustic fence along the boundary with Sunnyside as indicatively annotated on the plan. The condition is recommended to secure details of this. In terms of amenity space, the communal garden area of approximately 18 metres by 12 metres is proposed, which is deemed acceptable to serve the proposed units. Similarly, 15 unallocated parking spaces are required as part of the council's parking strategy. 18 are actually proposed here, so we have an over provision. In terms of flooding, adequate surface water drainage measures have been submitted to support the application, subject to condition 20 requiring final soakage test results to be provided. As part of a member update, conditions 7 and 8 have been amended to reflect the fact that the proposed acoustic fence should be installed prior to the construction phase and maintained on-site for the lifetime of the development, and also to ensure the existing landscaping between the property boundary and the Sunnyside is retained wherever possible. Condition 17 duplicates condition 6, so should therefore be removed. Should members be minded to grant the application, An additional informative is recommended to draw the applicant's attention to the fact that once the scheme is implemented, the extant prior approval effectively falls away. However, it should be noted that it's not necessary in planning terms to rescind the prior approval consent in order to make the current application acceptable. The application has to be considered on its merits. Moreover, the applicant has also advised that they would not be willing to agree to a clause in the section 106 as such.
So the applicant would not
be happy to do that. Therefore, subject to the latest amendment to the conditions, the proposal addresses the previous reasons for refusal and is recommended for approval subject to completion of the Section 106 agreement to secure affordable housing, SAM and SAM payments, and the conditions listed on page 168 of the main agenda.
Okay, so we have no ward members. I think we had a number of questions that we had answered at the site visit, but those principally related to the windows on the flank overlooking Sunnyside. And I think we understand that there will actually be a reduction in the number of windows under the proposed scheme, which is in many senses an improvement. We'll also see from the plans that you have that the overall ridge line of the building, the proposed building, is noticeably below most of the existing height of the building, so it's actually a reduction in height and bulk. So it will probably be slightly less dominating. I think the other thing was that I think was lost to us on the site visit was that we were concerned about the retention of vegetation, but buried in the small print on the plan, and writing it was too small for us to read in the site visit, was that there's going to be a 2-metre acoustic fence erected all along that boundary. And as you've seen as a result of discussions on Monday, we've asked that actually is installed prior to any of the construction work starting to minimise the impact of the neighbouring residents. Andrew, I'm just a little concerned. I did also raise on Monday that there is an extant permission on this, and that if we were to approve this, we might end up with some kind of hybrid scheme, and ask you to look at whether we could, in essence, agree that the existing permission fell away if this was approved, but you're indicating the applicant is not willing to agree to that, which, if anything, increases my concern.
Yeah, that's correct. The applicant's not willing to agree to that. From their perspective, economic situations may change within the period between when the prior approval lapses, and they may well need to fall back to that position and implement that scheme. So they're not willing to release that position at this stage. Their intention is to build out this scheme that's before us tonight, but they understand we want to keep their options available. And in planning terms, we have to consider the application on its merits. The merit of the application doesn't rely on the fact that we could potentially rescind the prior agreement.
But since the prior agreement is for less units, it would be unlikely the developer would choose to build less units and presumably make less profit on the site than they could with this better scheme that I think members are happy to support. Yeah. Okay, there are, as I say, no speakers. Do any members wish to add comments to this? Bob, I know you weren't on the site visit, but is there anything you need to clarify?
Yeah, I can't see anywhere, unless I've missed it, where it mentions internal space standards. Now, the planning approval that we gave was for 11. This is an increase of 4, so I'm concerned that the space has to come from somewhere.
Okay, we covered that at the site visit. Could you just clarify that?
Yes, sure. Internal space standards, it complies with both the council's standards, but also the national standards as well. We had no control over the prior approval in terms of the internal layout or the size of the rooms.
So from that, I'm inclined to want the prior approval to fall away.
But we've been told the applicant isn't willing to do that. But I think the very fact that the prior approval was for how many? Can we just confirm how many units that was for?
11 units.
That was for 11 units as opposed to 15. I think in reality it's highly unlikely that the developer would choose to only build 11 units rather than the 15 that.
I agree with you, Simon, but I'm concerned that things might not go as we would wish.
Mary, legally I don't think we can do anything here, can we?
It's always difficult when the applicant doesn't agree. And in any case, I mean, if you put in yourself, it doesn't mean that he's going to. Can he rebuild the two developments at the same time, or are you concerned that he's going to mix and match?
I am.
No,
if he mix and matches, he doesn't have planning permission at all.
Sure. So he has to come back with the further.
That's an easy enforcement issue. But I think, is there a fear that he could build the two at the same time on the same site? Or is there room to build two?
No.
So
it's the one and the same, pretty much.
Yeah.
The conversion is the conversion of the office plus the extension on the side.
So legally he has a choice of two permissions, and you know, if he mix and matches, that's a plain enforcement issue.
I think also from I'm not a estate agent obviously, but the outlook from the 15 units scheme that we've got before us is much more preferable in terms of quality of space as part of the scheme than the 11 unit scheme, which would rely on small windows approximately that size, as you saw from the offices, at high level windows as well. So the output conversion is to be very poor. So I think they wouldn't be particularly saleable. So hence,
I think members are in quite a difficult position here, because if we were to not support this application, the applicant would go ahead with the extant scheme, which would result in 12 units as opposed to 15, which didn't meet our own space standard, and raised significant issues of overlooking and significant issues of poorer quality outlook for the new residents. So I don't think we've really got any grounds to go against it, although I have some slight reservations. Do any other members wish to speak? John?
I didn't go to the site, but I think I know the site. I'm a bit concerned that we're building some flats here, or some flats being built, and there is no proposal to allocate any of the parking. I would have thought this was a perfect opportunity to have permit parking for this, so people do have allocated parking spaces on the site.
It's down to the applicant. We can't force them to do a permit or not, because obviously if they want to, the site theoretically is all private, and it's down to them. I mean, there's enough. We only require 15 parking spaces, but they're obviously providing 18, and there is probably room on site to get some more if need be. Yeah. But I guess the issue is it doesn't have any impacts on the highway. There's plenty of room on site, not to impact upon.
I think the other thing you would have seen on the site visit was, I think we were all quite surprised when we went over the site. The proposed parking area, not only can it quite easily accommodate the number of spaces detailed here, it could certainly accommodate significantly more if we wanted to. So I would be very surprised, even allowing for potentially 2 cars for some of the flats, that I think they're going to accommodate quite adequately on site. Parking certainly wasn't a matter of concern for members of the site visit.
Okay, I agree. So I didn't go on, just minded that we have certain locations in the borough where it works.
Yep. Okay, no other members indicate. Sorry, Martin.
Just a quick question. The approval they've already got, which is still valid, is that the one that's going to expire in January 17 anyway, I guess?
That's correct.
It's only got 3 years, so it's only 7 or 8 months left, really.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Right, members, so see no one else indicating, so I'll put this to the vote. Could members please indicate on application 152649 Spencer's Wood whether they can approve this matter? Sorry, I've skipped a page, so I've gone ahead of myself here, just a moment. So whether on application 153258 members are prepared to approve. Could you please indicate it? And that's unanimously approved. Thank you, members. We now move on to the final application this evening, which is 44 Tippings Lane. And I think Graham, we're going to do this one, so we'll go straight across to you.
The application is for the subdivision of an existing 4-bed dwelling into 2 2-bed dwellings. It's part retrospective due to internal and external works having taken place. The application has been listed by Councillor Baker on the basis of impacts on the character of the area through creating a terrace property, increased parking pressures, and the potential for the property to be a house or multiple occupation. The site is within the major development location of Woodley and located on Tippings Lane. Tippings Lane has residential development to the west and a large area of woodland to the east. However, character is established through residential units addressing the road. The plans indicate the dwelling will be subdivided centrally with minor internal works to provide a party wall. Externally, the main change would be the replacement of the garage door with a window as well as a standard garden fence separating the amenity space. Looking south of the site, you can see some of the dwellings on Tippings Lane. The type of dwellings does change, but they do respect a building line all along the street. Looking north of the site, you can see some of the semi-detached dwellings on Tippings Lane. This is the site itself, and you can see the substantial size of the extensions that have previously been constructed. The garage door that was located to the left of the dwelling has been replaced with a window, and to the side you can see the existing access door, which would be used for access into the additional dwelling. Also, the existing front area has been entirely covered in hard standing, providing an area of parking, but this occurred some time ago. The site is within an established residential area where properties have been extended, and in the case of semi-detached properties, this tends to be first floor to the side. In the case of the application site, the property has already been well extended to the extent it already has the scale and proportions of a much larger property. The application proposes very minimal external changes which do not increase the built form on the site. As a result, no harmful impact on the character area is considered to occur. Looking at the urban form of the wider area, it can be seen that there are mixed dwelling types. The site is outlined in red. Then I've highlighted the semi-detached dwellings in dark green, the linked detached dwellings in dark blue, the terrace dwellings in black, and the detached dwellings in yellow. As you can see, there are a number of different types on Tippings Lane alone. The application site is already at a point where there is a change in the dwelling type, and the proposal would not change this, save for making it a different dwelling type in an already mixed area. As a result, no harm in planning terms can be established. The parking for the dwellings will be provided by a hard standing to the front, which gives 2 spaces for each of the dwellings. This accords with parking standards. Concerns have been raised that visitors would be unable to park on the driveway. However, there is nothing in planning terms that can prevent on-street parking happening at the moment. Subject to conditions, no harmful impact occurs in terms of tree and landscape impact, environmental health concerns, or internal and amenity space. There is no further information in the members' update.
Okay. Graham. And just Keith. This will be. I guess you must be our remaining registered speaker.
We'll be very good. Members of the Planning Committee, this application highlights a huge deficiency in our planning laws, which in part was a reason for listing this application. I know the rules are that only issues which are planning related should be raised in objections, but sometimes it is helpful if the committee are aware of the background. This application is referenced once as a part retrospective application, but the reality is that the development has been completed with only some internal works remaining. Over the period that this application has been submitted, the work has continued to the annoyance of neighbours. Why the work was not suspended, awaiting the outcome of the application, I do not know. Now let me turn to the recommendation, which is a conditional approval, and show that in these circumstances, these conditions are frankly nonsense. Condition 2, in summary, says, within 3 months of the date of this permission, a scheme of landscaping shall be submitted and approved in writing. The work has been completed, so this condition is frankly meaningless. Condition 3A, summary, says, within 3 months of the date of this permission, an arboricultural method statement and scheme of work shall be submitted and approved in writing. Again, with the works being completed, this condition is also meaningless. The same applies to condition 3B, interior protection works, 3C, the services excavation, because that's already been done, and 5, retained shrubs, etc. All are meaningless if the work is completed. I fully expect the committee to approve this application, and I fully understand why you will do this. In fact, the residents have realised that they are powerless here, which is why I'm sitting here alone with no representative of the residents who backed out, and also the town council who backed out. However, the applicant here has totally ignored the law and simply got on with what they wanted to do and completed the work before planning approval was given. I just question, is this a green light for others to do the same thing? Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Obviously, we're fortunate that the majority of applicants in the borough go about it the right way. But as you know, as a planning committee, the local planning authority, its role is to approve applications that meet our standards and meet both local and national planning guidelines, regardless of whether they're being submitted retrospectively. I would like to ask, what do we do about these conditions? Is this, in essence, if we were to approve this, is this an application that could not be deemed to be complete until we've got satisfactory responses on these conditions, or as Keith has indicated, is in fact these conditions mean this? Could we just get some clarity on that?
The point of the 3 months is because we do have to be reasonable to any applicant, and therefore we can't just make sure that they have something straight away. We do have to have a degree of reasonableness to allow them some time to submit something. They are worded like that because of it being part retrospective. In terms of condition 2 with the landscaping scheme, we certainly would want to see some details. So I think that's fair enough to have that on there.
So just let us stop here. So if, for instance, you won't be able to get satisfactory confirmation on any of these, that would be, if by applying these conditions, there would then be a breach of condition situation.
Yeah,
and as a breach of condition cannot be appealed against, can it?
What? Yeah, so Chair, there would be a breach of planning commission, so we would be...
So if we served a breach of condition notice,
yes,
that's something they couldn't appeal against?
No.
Correct. Okay, so we would have quite a strong position then.
We could, yeah, chase them.
Okay. Okay. Any other members wishing to speak? Sorry, Tim.
Yeah. Which bits is actually retrospective, just so I'm clear, please?
There's the plans on page 205 and 211. Gives you in essence, the existing proposal and the existing, this is not building in the background. So we're comparing that in the front. So the garage has principally disappeared and has been replaced by a window, and the front entrance to the building has been returned to the side. In essence, what you've got is a semi-detached house where the right-hand semi-detached house remains as it was, the left-hand semi-detached house has been turned into a terraced house attached to, in essence, it's a one semi-detached that's been further subdivided. So you've got a half-size semi-detached and a full-size semi-detached.
There's been no movement of the walls outwards. It's exactly on the same footprint.
That's correct.
I'm happy with that then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Bob?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be a lone voice crying in the wilderness here, but I'm not going to approve this because it annoys me that they do it, then come to us and ask for permission. I think we should refuse permission and enforce, but I'm probably a lone voice on that.
I think Bob would struggle to find reasons to refuse it because it doesn't involve an increase in footprint of the dwelling. But I agree with you, it's very regrettable, and it's a shame the applicant isn't here to hear our disappointment with the approach they've taken on the property. John?
Can I just ask, all the extensions and everything, have they been approved lawfully?
Yeah, if I refer you to page 193 of the agenda and in the middle of the page, the planning history, and that details, that's the last two in the box.
So that's 38248 and 40301.
Yeah, that's correct.
Michelle?
I'm just afraid this is setting precedent then, telling people, go right ahead and do whatever you want, and we'll approve it anyway. I'm sorry, it's just one of those things.
Unfortunately, Rochelle,
I know.
People have been doing that for 30 or 40 years.
Yes, I know that, but it's still pushing this.
I
pushing
agree,
the.
and I think it shows disrespect to the neighbours, it shows disrespect to the community, but that's where we are. So, any other members wish to speak? Chris?
Just the main point for objecting to this was the terracing effect, which no one's mentioned, but as the front of the property has not been altered.
But it has as much as the
Not from the
garage.
garage window.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think that constitutes turning into a terrace.
Okay, members, no alternative proposal being put forward. Could you please indicate whether you're willing to support this partially retrospective application 160167? All those wishing to support, please indicate. And are those wishing to abstain? Are those objecting?
Objecting, I think it's the
Right, so
Point of principle.
Yes.
that's carried by 7 votes to 9. That concludes. Sorry, 7 So that concludes tonight's main part of the planning committee. Thank you, Stuart.